Good morning, Glue Troopers. Well, it's good to be back. And lots to talk about, so let's get started. First off, I'm a couple of hundred pages in on this book by Jimmy Doolittle, I Could Never Be So Lucky Again. And on the deadhead flight from Puerto Rico last night, I was reading all about what he had to say about flying the GB Racer. And you guys had heard me talk about the GB recently. I was talking about the crash with Lowell Bales. Anyway, there's the last evolution of the GB Racer, and that's the R1. And they only made a couple of them. I did not realize when Doolittle flew that airplane to victory in the Thompson Trophy race back in '32 that he had only flown the plane a couple of times. Apparently he had been working with Matty Laird to get his super solution, the biplane racer, ready to go. And to speed the plane up, they put a retractable gear on it, and unfortunately the gear failed due to the air load. So just before the race, he wound up having a belly landed. They couldn't repair it in time, and then the Granvilles, Zantford Granville called him and said, "Hey, look, we got this new racer," and he jumped on it, and man, he didn't, except for it being scalding fast, he didn't have much good to say about it. Apparently it was I'd heard it was a tricky plane to fly, but his words were it was beyond tricky. It was outright dangerous, but it did perform. And like most of you pointed out, it's basically an engine with enough airplane around it to fly. When I got home, Tom Daniel, the famous model designer and artist, had sent me something. I opened it up, and it's the Tester's Hawk GB in the limited series box. Talk about the Great Styrer River. I mean, the amount of universal cohesion in models astonishes me. So I was telling my wife, I'm jumping, I'm down. I was just looking, I'm digging through the book. I was just reading about this. Look at this. Literally, I was just talking about how tricky this was to fly. So, of course, this will be painted up as Doolittle's Racer. And a lot of you guys had mentioned that you had built the Hawk race planes when you were kids, and so did I. I think I had built, it might have been the Mystery Ship or it might have been the Waddell Williams, I'm not sure. But I thought that was just something else. Also, from Richard, he sent me a Gundam. This is the MS-06S Zaku 2, and since I also have the one that Eduardo gave me over here, the is that the Razor? We'll see if I can do a community build those at the same time. And one thing that I was thinking about with these Gundam kits is, since they don't really have to be painted, I mean, you can detail them out, but they basically come in color. One of these might make a good kit to take on the road with me, because I want to carry paints and stuff, and you really don't even need glues. You just need a sanding stick and maybe a sprue cutter. And that shouldn't have any problem with security with that at the airport. So, but I'm going to put this with the one Eduardo got me so I can build them at the same time when I get to them. I'm not 100% sure when that's going to be, but it's... thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. And the other thing was, also, you guys may remember I was talking about the Mercury Redstone, the Estes kit. There was a company that made a decal that you stuck on the whole thing that had all the details on it. You didn't have to paint any rivets or anything. It was all in there. And Paul sent me this, which is exactly what I was talking about. And it's got all of the details and everything on it, so you don't have to paint the rocket. You can just put these on it. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I might get to that today. I don't know. We have things going on here, as you guys know. Like I said, the next month or so, I'm going to be busy with some other stuff that's going on here. But This is from Paul, and Paul, I appreciate that. And never give up, never surrender, Galaxy Quest. That's just wonderful. Guys, thank you. Thank you very much. I also want to get started on the wagons I talked about. That's the immediate model front. I have Dan Gurney and the Polara up there with Tazio and the GTOs now on the shelf. And given that I know Mark Tyler at Immense Miniatures is very particular about all the details, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Dan Gurney is a lot taller than Tazio Novellari. Now on just a super quick war story. I was getting ready to leave out of Santo Domingo yesterday, and just as we got to the runway, we got a warning message, and it's a maintenance thing. We had to go back to the gate, which is always disappointing. Mechanics did their run-ups and everything went fine. So we were redispatched. We went out the second time. Now, the first time it went out, you got frowny face Captain Max. But we were all ready to go, and they made us wait on landing traffic that was 5 miles out. We could have gone, but anyway, while we were sitting there waiting, bing, the message came back. Then you got, I can't believe this is happening, hair pull Captain Max. And so after a 6-hour stay, they got us another airplane. And that trip proceeded normally. But I had mentioned earlier that there were some communication issues, because when I'm down in the islands, the internet can be spotty or not available at all. That's one reason I wasn't able to get anything out. Plus, like I say, days wound up going a lot longer than we expected. But that's no problem. I mean, that's just the job. That's why you bring a good book like this with you. You know, you got hours to kill. Just you know, one thing I learned about flying the line: you can do what you can do, and you can't do what you can't do. So sometimes you just don't try to push the rope. You just go with the flow. And anyway, this GB is interesting because I'd seen Delmar Benjamin fly his replica GB, and he put on an interesting show. And I spoke with him briefly. And I asked him why he built it. He said he just wanted to know what it was like to fly one. It's since been retired, but I had heard no good things about the handling on that airplane. And they had that little stub tail had been added. They'd added like 2 square feet of tail to it. And Doolittle had to teach himself to fly. There was no 2-seat trainer. And thankfully he had that degree in engineering and a lot of experience. I cannot believe how many airplanes Doolittle cracked up. I did not appreciate. I knew accidents were common back then, but he must have. I'm not even halfway through the book, and he must have destroyed, 9 airplanes so far. And he admits a lot of them were his own fault, screwing around. But they didn't have a lot of ways in the rules back. They didn't have a lot of rules back then, and he was, you know, an ambitious young guy, and you know, ambitious young men do silly things sometimes. But anyway, still my greatest flying hero. And the way they drop names in this book. Yeah, I was at this race and I was talking with Lindbergh, you know, I was at this race, and he's just all these big names in aviation. Yeah, I was talking with Glenn Curtis, or you know, I'm like, oh, you know, I mean, God, how many of us have built models of all these, you know, companies and people and planes, you know, like Granville Brothers, or I was talking with Roscoe Turner, or you know, Lowell Bales. And in this book, he says that GB crashed Lowell Bales, that it was the gas cap coming through, went through that little thin plexiglass windshield, hit him in the head, and probably knocking him unconscious, and which caused him to jerk the controls. And given that he was on a high-speed pass, that probably overloaded the wing. Why did you see that piece of wing come off? Because he talked about these old racers, like the GB, the GBs, all of them. You have to remember, this is all new technology. They're pushing these wire and strut airplanes 250, in the case of the GB, 300 miles an hour. And yeah, they were made to go that fast, but it's before anybody knew how to make a plane to go that fast. And it was getting to the point that the wings were warping and flexing due to the speed. He talks about how, in the case of the Laird Super Solution, the airplane was going so fast at 230 or 250 miles an hour that it would start to roll, and he had put in aileron the other way, and it wasn't enough to correct it. He couldn't trim it out, and he couldn't use enough sticks. He had to slow up, because what was happening is, as they were going so fast, the wings were starting to twist. and obviously the airframes are a little underbuilt. He was putting on an approved aerobatic show. He was actually practicing for an approved aerobatic show, and I think it was an early P-1 Hawk, and he was performing an outside maneuver. He was going to go over the top, not a complete outside loop because those have been prohibited, but he was going to go over the top and then roll it around. And as he pushed it over the top, he felt something go pop, and the whole upper wing came loose. It stayed on the airplane, but he completely lost control, and he popped his seatbelt and got tossed out and parachuted to safety. But he talked about how many airplanes just broke up on him. And you know, we love building models of these things, and they're great to see in museums or at air shows, but you realize when you push these things, you didn't have to push them very far before catastrophe took place. And he talks about all the accidents as early instrument flying. And if you're an aviator, it's dry, but it's because it's just technical stuff, but it's also very riveting because you're like, this is how great discoveries were made. And the fact that he survived it, he's keenly aware of the fact that he survived it is no small miracle. He's a 3-time member of the Caterpillar Club, 3 bailouts. And one of them, he had actually bought the wreckage of the damaged race plane and modified it himself. And when he was out test flying it, he had made some modifications that, despite his MIT degree, they were still learning as they went, and he made some modifications to the torque tubes that didn't hold up. So there he got the airplane up around 300 miles an hour, but when he tried to turn and impose the load on it, tried to pull up, it overstressed the ailerons. They let go, and he had to bail out at such low altitude. He goes, he actually wore 2 seatbelts back then, and he was cursing himself because he's fiddling with the second one. And he popped it out, went out, and of course, you know, those races were done, or even practice sessions were done pretty low. And when he got out of the airplane, he pulled the ripcord. He says he did 1 swing and hit the dirt. I mean, it was that low. He probably held the record for the lowest successful bailout until one pilot that he mentions, who he knew and survived amazingly, actually had a race plane come undone him. Had a race plane come undone on him. He hit a house, was catapulted out of the crashing airplane, and pulled his ripcord, and the parachute opened, and he landed a half a block away in I think it was a schoolyard or a churchyard or something. But it was like, you can't make this up. The airplane actually hits a house, throws the pilot out, who then opens his parachute and lands half a block away. They were wild times. And some of the accidents had the most ridiculous causes, and some of them it was a lot of instrument flying because they didn't have instruments back then. But to speak of, but a lot of seat of the pants today we still have them. It's one of the most common causes of fatal crashes: VFR pilots flying in instrument conditions. And back then, pilots thought you could fly by the seat of your pants, and trust me, you cannot. So anyway, I'm looking forward to getting on this. It's getting a little cool down here, but my little heater is doing a great job of warming things up. But unfortunately, I have all kinds of administrative details that must be tended to, so I need to get on that. Hopefully this afternoon, I'll get out here. I'm off for the next couple of weeks. Like I say, there are some demands on my time, but I should still be able to get some forward progress made. And I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Paul, and I want to thank Richard, and I want to thank TD for the gifts. I really do appreciate it. And guys, keep the faith and model on. From Jason. You remember I had talked about how, just go over here for a second. I had talked about how on the Mercury Redstone there was one person that had made the decals that you could put on it that were fully detailed, and sure enough, oh, I'm sorry. This is from Paul. Okay. Cut. This is from Paul. You guys may remember that he put Never Give Up, Never Surrender, Jason Nesmith, Galaxy Quest. I read the name Jason. Is this Jason? That's not the name. Anyway, okay, cut.